Good morning, everyone. Welcome. We have 20 plus and counting. For those who are coming in, good morning. If you have access to your chat now, feel free to type in where you're coming from so that you can let us and let everyone know where you're all coming from. See some familiar names, quite a few more new names actually. We should be around 200 today, so who will either join us in today's live session or who will see the slides. Hi there, Juliana. Hope everything's fine in Vienna. Uh, Everyone else, let us know how you're doing there in your cities. Okay, we have about almost 100 now. There's someone from Belgium. Hi there, Josephine. Someone from Dublin, Lyon in France, Essex, UK. Someone from Italy, Montpellier. Hello from Pisa, fellow Pisan. Okay, excellent. So I see the chat's working well, and that's important because if you have any questions, that's where you'll put them. Okay, so I think we're now up to 100 and counting. As mentioned, there should be around 200 here. So as they're coming in, now I pass the floor to Deborah Testi, the coordinator of DICE, who will give the welcome and introduction. Deborah, if you would.
Hi, thanks, Rob. I will quickly share my screen with just a couple of. Okay, hope it works. Okay, so good morning, everyone, and welcome to this joint DICE EOSPILLER webinar on fair data management gaps and solution. We are really thankful for you to find 1 hour of your time in this busy period to listen to us and the results of both projects. So just few words, as I mentioned, this is a webinar that is jointly organized by EOSPILLER and DICE projects. They are both EU-funded projects. EOSPILLER coordinates national open science effort across 5 European countries, Austria, Belgium, France, Germany, and Italy, to ensure contribution and readiness in the implementation of the European Open Science Cloud. And specifically for this webinar, we are interested on the results of the National Initiative Survey, which was conducted last year, which was in particular addressing in one of the sections the fairness of data repositories in these different countries in Europe. At the same time, the DICE project was also funded as part of the InfraEOSCO 7 call, and it aims to enable the European infrastructure with data management services for European researchers. And in particular, it offers generic service that are meant to store, find, and share and access different kind of data. And 3 in particular services will be presented today. The one related to the managing and accessing persistent identifiers, B2Find that is related to the metadata indexing services and discovery, and B2Share, which is the DICE data repository service. So the agenda, we try to keep the presentation short so that we will have quite some time in the end for discussion and question. So the first part will be from EOSPILLER, from Federica Tanlongo, from GAR, which is also a coordinator of the EOSPILLER project, and then the 3 service owners from the DICE project will be presenting the different services. Just for you to know some logistic information, this webinar will be recorded, and both the slides and the recording will be made available both on the EOSPILLER and DICE project website, so you will be able to find them there. We kindly ask you to keep questions to the end, so we will populate the discussion session, and maybe you will hear answer to your doubts during the following presentation. And if you want, you can also use the chat that you already tested while during the Rob, welcome him to drop us question if you'd prefer not to speak later on. But we will come back to the Q&A after all our speakers. So just to save matter of time, I will give now the floor to Federica for her presentation on the Spiller National Survey. Please, Federica.
So hi, everybody. I am introducing today's discussion with a few words on the landscaping activity we carried out in Spiller and illustrate a few results relating to FAIR in the 5 EC countries we cover. So a few words about Spiller. As Deborah mentioned, ours is one of the 4 regional IOSC implementation projects and covers Austria, Belgium, France, Italy, and Germany. Next slide, please. And next again. And here are the key challenges we set out to meet. Next slide, please. So now the first activity we did to address these challenges was to run a large survey on the status quo to assess the maturity level of the countries and their capacity to contribute to the IOSC in different regards and study how we could best improve and accelerate it. Next, please. We defined 4 target groups: research infrastructures, e-infrastructures, universities, and funding bodies, and asked questions about 4 main aspects. So those related to sustainability, business models, SLA, support, etc. Those relating to access, those relating to data management and FAIR, and those on user communities and services. Today, I'm showing an abstract of what we found out on the FAIR part. You can find, next slide, please, the whole study on Zenodo, and the datasets are maintained and curated here at this link if you're interested in learning more. It is quite a bulky study. Next, please. So now for the questions we asked about fairness. The first thing we asked was how much familiar respondents felt with FAIR principles. So as you can see, although there are some small differences between the 4 respondent groups, most felt they were between very familiar and familiar. Next slide. When it came to rate how much their own data holdings actually were, however, most of the respondents were somewhat humbler and put themselves in the somewhat group. Note this question was only asked to representative of e-infrastructures, a category that in our work means those who manage repositories and data-related digital infrastructures. So next slide, please. Next question was about how they did. So more of the 50% of respondents in this category have a fully implemented metadata search feature, and only a minority of those who haven't yet one did not consider to implement one at some point. Next, please. A similar trend with somewhat lower numbers we can see for the provision of a data catalog in machine-readable format, with over 40% already implementing this feature and the others somewhere else, somewhere in their way. Next, please. So far, I talked about the overall results. We also did studies at the country level. And in the next slide, you can find some of the highlights. I have no time, unfortunately, to go into this level of detail, so I'm just skimming those differences and pick a couple of highlights. So as we noticed before, generally speaking, representatives for e-infrastructure funded by these universities and research infrastructures are predominantly familiar or anyway, very familiar with the principle of FAIR data, and the differences across the 4 target groups are very small. But there are some interesting differences. The most interesting of which, in my opinion, is that the link between FAIR and open science and EOSC in general is not always so immediate as one could imagine. For instance, here in Austria, we got an above the average awareness of FAIR principles, but only a minority was involved or even familiar with EOSC, while, next slide please, in Germany, we have quite the reverse with a relatively lower score on FAIR, but a better one on EOSC readiness and expectations. Also, there are differences in the readiness of disciplinary areas as in Belgium. Next slide, please. So where some disciplinary areas are far more advanced than others. And next slide, in the level of the central policy support with France, for instance, that you can see in this slide, very centralized. And next, Italy, for instance, lacking formal policy directions and relying on the informal. And also in this slide, we can see another interesting thing, that there are nuances in the perception of some of the issues, like in this slide, the concern on risks and disadvantages, real or perceived, of openly sharing our own data. Next slide, please. So now some more details on FAIR, and let's start with the F. So for across countries, we can see that repositories reach an average findability score of 75%, with very small differences between the 5 countries. Next, in particular, 44% of the respondents have fully implemented persistent identifiers, with another 17% that are currently implementing them. And for repositories that use persistent identifiers, DOIs are the most common, followed by ANDOS and URN. Next slide. When we look at unique identifiers for researchers, we have 42% of the repositories that use them in metadata, with ORCID being the most frequent. And these unique identifiers are especially popular in Italian repositories. Next, please. Now, coming to accessibility, we measured the number of infrastructures having publicly available access policies, and we can see that most of those have, and there is a large effort to increase their number, especially in countries like France and Belgium. Next, please. So interoperability. Overall, across countries, repository reach an average interoperability score of 75%, which is not bad at all, with small differences across the countries, and in particular, next slide, please. 52% of the repositories use standardized or controlled vocabulary for metadata, with the German repositories being the best performance on this particular indicator. Next slide, please. So last but not least, reusability. So across the countries, repository reach an average reusability score of 57%, and here differences are a bit more marked, but nothing dramatic. Next slide, please. And we reached the end of this presentation. So some preliminary conclusions. What we found in our survey show that the road to fairness is still long, and respondents seem very aware of it. And when we are talking of fairness, we don't have a yes or no normally, but more we can represent it as a continuum, and a continuum that we in EOSPILR and in so many other projects in this area are striving to improve in many ways. And fairness is not a weird researcher's hobby. It takes time, effort, and a lot of coordination. And in particular, it needs strategy and support both at the technical and policy level. And we see the difference where this is not there. And last but not least, as often in life, there is no magic wand, unfortunately, but the solution is achieved through a mix of things we find that work. And with this in mind, I think I can give the word to the other presenters that are going to show some. Thank you.
Thank you, Federica, for your presentation. I give the floor now to Themis for the B2Handle presentation. I'm seeing some question in the chat. We can take some at the end, but if you want, Federica, answer some very quickly. There are like, how many respondents did you have in the survey? You can also do it in the chat. Please, Themis.
I will unmute first because I'm losing the controls of the voice.
No problem.
Can you see my presentation?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay. So I'm Themis Zamani. I'm working as a project manager at GRNet, but also I participate in DICE, and I am the product owner of B2Handle. Since I only have 8 minutes, I decided to start with something different. And we can see some real examples. So these are a few emails we have received during the last few years, and are from clients, users that want to use the B2Handle. This is an example from a researcher where he's interested in using PID for the repository of data that they're handling in their project. We have a university where they want to obtain persistent identifiers for an application to store and publish their working papers. And finally, from a group that needs technical support for a project to issue data, products, persistent unique identifiers using the B2Handle service. What we see from these emails are the user requirements, how they understand the persistent identifiers, and what they expect from the B2Handle service. So actually, we have different users that have different data, metadata, raw data, and working papers, and they have a common goal. They want to optimize the utility of their data. They have actually some common principles in mind, and they want to make their data fair. These fair data principles are: they want their data to be findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. This can be done by using persistent identifiers. This is one way to do that. And a persistent identifier is a long-term reference to a document, a file, a web page, or any other digital object. It allows any object to be identified persistently and uniquely by associating its reference data. If you ask me if there's an easy way to do that, I could say that as a member in the B2Handle team, it's our main goal to help the users easily assign and manage persistent identifiers. So actually, B2Handle is a service for storing, managing, and accessing persistent identifiers, accessing metadata, and using PID namespaces. It is a service designed to contribute to the data persistency by maintaining opaque and globally unique persistent identifiers. The difference of B2Handle is that it names the persistent identifiers as handles. So the main features and options you have when you're using B2Handle is that you can host the handles for your own use by using your own prefix. It supports the reverse lookups of the date of the handle records, and it supports globally resolvable identifiers via the global handle network. If you have some specific ideas about how to use your handles, B2Handle can also be customized to community and organizational needs. Although you may think that all these different features and options are technically difficult, we have to say that in B2Handle, all of these actions and difficult technologies are hidden from the user. It actually favors simplicity and flexibility, and you can easily integrate your service or your product with B2Handle via REST and easy-to-use REST API for the easy registration and binding of persistent identifiers, or via a user-friendly Python library, which also enables the creation and management and resolution of persistent identifiers. Apart from that, documentation and ready-to-use examples are also available for everyone to start using the service. In order to understand the use of B2Handle, let's discuss an example from the clients that I present, from the emails I presented at our first at the first slide. The idea is here, the simplest data life cycle. The researcher client said that he has a research output that wants to share with another researcher. And the traditional way that he was using is to store and upload the output to a website. He copied the URL that he put the output, and he shared it with another researcher. As long as nothing changes about the way the output, the data was accessed, this worked fine. But one day he decided to move the resource to another location. Then the other researchers couldn't find the output that he wanted to do, and the arrangement that they did has proven to be fragile. So he decided to change that and to find a way to make his outputs referable and to obtain persistent identifiers for his data. So he started integrated B2Handle. From that moment, the persistent identifiers and the data are subject to the same life cycle. So every time the first time he published online his resource, he registered for a persistent identifier through B2Handle, and his output was resolvable via a persistent identifier. He decided that to follow this. He decided to follow this life cycle, data life cycle, and B2Handle could easily support the different stages of this life cycle with just a few lines of code. Apart from the B2Handle is a part of a suite of EU data services, and is also integrated to other B2 services. One of them is B2Safe, where you can store your data, and it assigns PIDs to all the resources. B2Find also uses persistent identifiers via B2Handle, and B2Share is also using persistent identifiers and mines all objects. If you want to know more about the B2Handle, you can read about it through the EUDAT website or via the repository we have at GitHub. And you can also test the service by visiting other B2 services I mentioned before. That's from me. If you have any questions.
Thanks, Themis. For the presentation, as mentioned, you can anticipate question in the chat, but we will keep answering to the question to the end. So I give the floor to Chris for the presentation of B2Share.
Thank you very much. So I will share my screen.
Yep, that's fine.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm Chris Ario from CSC IT Center for Science, Finland. I am the service owner for B2Share. So I'm going to briefly present to you some information about B2Share. Yeah, it's a part of the EUDAT B2 services suite. And you can see from the middle there, green, it's integrated with quite a lot of other members of the EUDAT services. So what is B2Share? It's a user-friendly data sharing platform. You can publish your data, store it, and publish your data. So that is as simple as it could be. We preserve it for a long time, share, and then also we put in all the necessary PIDs and DOI. Who uses them? Small to medium teams. So that means you can, as a citizen scientist, as an individual, if you need to store data, then that you want to share, then you can always store them in B2Share. Okay, why? This is the important part here because of the fact that a lot of money is put into research, and it's good to be able to get things back from the research in such that so that people can reuse your research in the future. So we register the data for publications to make it fair, make it known to wider communities. We give you opportunity of minimum metadata compliant with DataCite and OpenAIRE. It's flexible also for community-specific metadata extension. So we can extend if your community needs extra metadata, we can extend it. We support DOIs, DataCite DOIs on dataset level. We support PIDs, that means B2Handle, checksums and download statistics on object level. We have dataset record lifecycle and versioning. So we can know, you can know, okay, this is version 1, version 2, and so on and so forth. So authorizations for community domains. If you have a community and you want it to be controlled, we have authorizations for community domains in which we have an admin that will be able to look into, okay, this is data that is coming from our domain. Okay, we can allow it to be published or not. So, and we have metadata automatic harvested by B2Find. And through B2Find, also B2OpenAIRE can also get data from B2Find and then get our information from there back to B2Share. We have direct uploads from B2Share, uploads and downloads. That means uploads from B2Drop, and as well as we can directly from B2Share upload data into B2Share for publication, and easily installable as local instance if you want as a Docker. So how to use B2Share? You need to register. You register at b2share.eu.eu register use B to access domain, and then just select have a new account. To deposit the data after registering, just go there and go and create a new record, enter a title, select appropriate domain or project or community, and then just create draft. Then you can see the draft, modify it, and when you want to, then you can publish it. And as I said, dataset will be annotated with selected domains metadata scheme. That means if you are with a particular domain community, then the metadata scheme also where available can be used. So this is an intuitive page for B2Share where you can see where to log in. You can log in and then create a new record. And from there, you can select your communities and then go forward to publish your data as draft. And after you have finished looking at the draft and everything, you are satisfied with it, then you can publish so that everybody else can see it. That's what I have. Thank you. Questions?
Thanks a lot, Chris. I will give now the floor to Claudia for the last service that will be presented today, and then we will move to Q&A. Thanks, Chris.
Can you see the slides?
Yeah, not yet in presentation mode, but
good morning from
now, yes.
Gray, dark, wet Hamburg, where the German Climate Computing Center is located, which is the service owner of B2Find, which I'm going to talk about. Very briefly, B2Find basically is a interdisciplinary search portal for research data. Currently, we have about 48 communities. That's what we call the data provider, or research infrastructures, or portals where we collect the metadata. About 1.5 million records up to now. On the productive instance, on the test instance, it's even more. I would like to pick up one remark from the chat that refers to granularity, and this is crucial because, for instance, for the climate model community, we have only, so to say, about, I think it's 2,200 records for the CMIP ramps, for instance, which are in the World Data Center of Climate Change, but each record has underlying terabytes of data, right? So the level which is shown on B2Find is the highest level, and then you can dig deeper. And this is, again, a question related to whether do you need only DOIs or even more. Yeah, so far for that. I just saw the question or the comment I wanted to reply to it. Within B2Find, you can search for a free text search. You have a free text search, and then you can narrow down using several facets, and that you can try out yourself. It is b2find.eu.eu. What is special? Actually, B2Find works in a way, as I said, that we harvest communities. Those communities are, again, the research infrastructure, catalogs, or data provider we are harvesting. Then we do a mapping within the metadata ingestion. Those mapping includes semantic conversion, format conversion. It includes some closed vocabs, for instance, for languages, and so on and so on. And we do a lot of validation, and then we upload everything that is then in our internal, let's say, repository to into our search portal. And I think what is special is that we put a lot of effort to enable the harvesting of communities that do not expose metadata in an already standardized way. And this is not common. And in theory, the idea is that everything is done by machines, everything is automated, everything is not done, of course, in a handish way, which is totally true, but in reality, this is not the case. A lot of data repositories have a lot of data which are not in a way exposed in a standardized way. So what we do, we support for harvesting OAI PMH, of course. We do support CSW, which is important for the especially for the geo communities, but we also support REST RPs, whether they are JSON RPs or others. Sparkle queries, so the harvesting of triples is only implemented in a beta version currently. For the mapping, we do support a lot of standards, of metadata standards. Of course, Dublin Core and DataCite, so the generic ones. OpenAIRE is more or less DataCite, including more identifier, not only DOIs. Of course, we do support EU.core, which is the core metadata schema for all the EU.dat services, especially for the harvesting of B2Share, which is basically DataCite plus discipline plus instrument plus geo and temporal coverage. Because geo coverage, so spatial coverage is possible to do that with DataCite. For temporary coverage, it is not yet. But of course, DataCite will evolve as well, so we will see. We do support thematic metadata standards, so those ISO standards. FGDC is kind of crosswalk for geolocations for DataCites. DDI is from the social sciences. We've implemented a DDI reader, but only for DDI 2.5. But what we do is that we include, or that we put some effort in developing community-specific mappings, so that even if there are no generic metadata standards offered, we try to include all those metadata into our search portal. And on the search portal, then you can search, as I said, you can use the free text search, or you can use all the facets. I think we have currently 17 stuff like that, including something like instrument, which is not yet very often offered, but we have some instruments. And you can use all the other facets to narrow down. Right, B2Find is not only a catalog, a metadata catalog, it's also a metadata aggregator, because all the records that are within B2Find are exposed to OpenAIRE. They are automatically harvested by OpenAIRE. So some remarks on how the integration of B2Share record works. You have different instances of B2Share, right? So one is at CSC, another one is FZJ, then you may have even a lot of more. This is only simplified diagram. Both of them, both instances, so both locations, let's say, do have a generic subset, which is called EU.dat, where you can store your data, and which is used when you have no specific instance or no specific community. But you have additional also specific, as I said, communities having specific community metadata schemas within B2Share. So what happens when it comes to B2Find? The EU.dat subset is all mapped onto the EU.dat community in B2Find, and the specific communities having different or specific metadata schemes are then integrated as communities in B2Find. Then we have all those other communities. Those are only some examples coming to 48 at the end, and all records for them are then exposed to OpenAIRE. We do this with an OAI PMH interface we developed for CKAN, which is some work, but it works, and we do expose each community as a subset then. So we use currently for the transfer to OpenAIRE the DataCite metadata schema, because this is what OpenAIRE wants, but we also expose our metadata in EU.core, so with some specific elements, spatial temporal coverage, discipline, instrument, contact. What does that mean in practice? It means in practice, when you have a record stored in B2Share using the subset EU.dat, so this is the generic one, you just are a small project within, I don't know, university, and you just want to register your data somewhere. You go to B2Share, as Chris described, log in, create an account, and then you drop down your data there. What you get is here a DOI and a PID. The DOI is for referencing this record, the PIDs is the same. That's a handle actually, but you can also get handles for the underlying files, right? So specifically for the use case, someone was asking in the chat, what can I do when I have millions of data? You can register within B2Share one, let's say, data set, getting a DOI with underlying files, or getting PIDs, right? And all of them being persistent. When you then look into B2Find and you search here, for the community EUDAT, as I said, you see this record. And when you then click onto the single result page, you see that those identifiers are, let's say, gone through all the services. And those DOI then links back to the record in B2Share. That was B2Find and very, very short. I believe there are a lot of questions which we can maybe discuss now. Just as a reminder before I stop, all the DICE services, including a lot of B2Find, B2 services, are for free until the end of DICE, which is next year in summer. And we are well aware that, of course, it is difficult to offer something that is only limited to a specific time. But especially for maybe trying whether that could be a good solution, it's splendid. The request goes directly via the EOS portal. You can see all services and you can request all services again for free there. And with this, I would stop my presentation.
Thanks a lot, Claudia, and also the other speakers before for the very nice, efficient presentation. I will just share one moment before we start. So we are now in the Q&A session. Just to let you know that we prepare a couple of guiding questions after answering your own that we will read now in the chat and give you also the floor. So while we start answering your question, if you can log in into Slido and answer very quick yes or no question or one word answer, so it's very quick, then we will collect extra information and we can discuss also this answer later on. So I think I will start with the first of all asking if there is someone who wants to speak out loud, while in the meantime we can address some of the questions that arrived through the chat. I seen you replied already to one, Chris, but I think there was also in the chat there are a few questions for you on B2Share. First of all, there was a question related to which is different between B2Share and the Nodo, and what you mean with long-term storage in terms of, I suppose, year. That was the question. As you already replied also in the Q&A, also there was someone else asking the same question on if it is possible to have a dedicated instance of B2Share or not. Can you start answering those questions, Grace, while people answer also the Slido ones?
Yeah. Yes, I can. The first question I got was, how would a local instance of B2Share work? Which, will it be totally standalone? Yes, it will work entirely standalone. But if you need, you can then work with B2Find to collect the metadata harvesting. So it wouldn't be a problem. It will work entirely alone because we have a few different B2Share at the moment, actually. So it will work entirely alone on it as a standalone service. But if you want, then you can contact the B2Find team, and then they will work with you to make sure they are able to harvest your metadata. The second question is what is the differences between
B2Share and Zenodo?
B2Share and Zenodo? There are some differences between B2Share and Zenodo. The interfaces are different, supported statistics, and a few other things are different from between them. But the core technology is the same, which is Invenio. But we have because what we expose to other people in B2Share is different from what we have in Zenodo. The next question is, could a research institution deploy its own B2Share installment? If not, using such an installment, is there a volume limitation for data set sizes in B2Share? The answer is yes. Any institution can deploy their own B2Share. And as previously said about the previous question about the standalone, you have your standalone, then you can ask B to find the team to harvest your metadata, or you can install it. But if you are not installing it, currently we have 20 gigabyte data set sizes in B2Share, but you can split your data into several 20 gigabytes to be published into one data set. And finally, can you elaborate on how B2Share guarantees long-term persistence of data and how long is long-term? That is, we are working currently, that CDI is working on the how long is long-term, because that's one of the most challenging part of it. How long is long-term? So, but we are working on it, and we are trying to make sure that we have this data, because we are publishing data that we want other people in the future to be able to reference and then use in their work. So how long is long term? I can't tell you at the moment because we are working on it.
But if I can add something on this, Chris, also related to another question that is now in the chat, so which is what happened when DICE ends. We might say for sure that all the services that have been presented today exist since already quite few years. I would say almost 10 years are supported by UDET. And the advantage now of DICE is what Claudia mentioned before, that we can offer the resources behind the services for free. And that would mean that you can try the services, test the services without spending any money for the moment. But even when DICE will end, UDET will continue to support the services as it has been done in the past. We have a collaboration agreement in place that is running for 5-10 years in the future. Obviously, we are working on long-term sustainability of the services. This is something that UDET is working on both in DICE and in UDET by itself. So the services will not be disrupted in 1 year enough time, but will for sure continue. So the opportunity now is to test basically the services for free, at least for the time being of DICE. Just to mention that B2Share, anyhow, the central instance has been always free for user to connect to, and this will remain. There might be a cost associated to the creation of dedicated instance or hosting of dedicated instance for you, but there is how is UDET different from DICE. So yeah, there is a difference, mainly that DICE is strongly supported by UDET, and many of the UDET services are offered via DICE, but DICE also includes other services and other providers of data management services that are not part of UDET. So it's more general effort putting together different providers, even if UDET is one of the major UDET partners, are the major one in the effort. Yeah, Claudia, you want to add something?
Yes, I would like to add that there is a dedicated webinar for specific services of DICE, for instance, for B2Safe, where the question is exactly where are the data stored, then how long, what will happen after. This is sometime in some weeks. Just look out, it will be announced on the DICE website. And there only also the solutions for the framework, for the interoperability framework, as well as the sustainability is given. So as Deborah said, the data won't go away because EUDAT as an institution will guarantee that the data are there and the services still exist. How much it will cost them later, probably, or maybe not, but to give you an overview, what is happening with those services who are requested now in DICE, the next webinars are dedicated to this. So just have a look on the website.
Thanks, thanks, Claudia, for the addition. Still seems there is one question on B2Handle, Tamis. So was how could we use B2Handle to generate PID for our research data? Maybe you want to say something more on that before
Where is
we
this
go.
question?
Is in the Q&A. It says,
Sure.
how could we use B2Handle to generate PIDs for our research data?
You have to make how you can use. You need first of all a prefix, so you need a request you need to make a request to us to create you a test account to start testing the service, and then when you are ready and can use it, you can ask for a prefix. You can start the process of acquiring your own prefix for your community. We have ready to use examples and documentation. If you have if you know Python, you can use our Python library, or if you have another language that you want to use, there is an easy to use API where you can start creating, updating, and deploying your PIDs.
But feel free to explore the documentation and what is available on the website. And if you have any question, you can write.
You can ask for a test account to start just using the service to test it to see if it suits you.
There is one raised hand. Sorry, I haven't spotted before. Cecilia, do you want to comment or make a question?
Cecilia, you can unmute if you'd like to share with us your question.
There's a question here that was in the chat. I will probably start it and then maybe Deborah can finish it.
Yep.
How is EUDAT different from DICE? EUDAT is different from DICE. EUDAT is a member of DICE. So we have all our communities. EUDAT was a project that ended, and then now a consortium in which we work to provide data management. So as EUDAT, we're a member of DICE. So if Deborah has any other question and any other comments on it.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I think we already partially replied to that. So
Okay.
I'll just give, if there is obviously any other question on this, I can go deeper in detail. But Claudia, do you want to say something?
Yes, I want to answer Marie's question because it's crucial. It's what the hell is sustainability and what the hell is long-term? Yeah, that refers a bit to the question what the EOSC is and how it will evolve. And for that, it's a bit, well, we don't know, we will see. It is clear that it's not a good idea at all to build infrastructure based on projects, but then how to make it in a way that it is not based on projects, but with underlying services that are the EOSC. I mean, that's a ongoing process. So, for instance, I'm pretty sure that the German Climate Computing Center, which is hosting the World Data Center for Climate Change, so all the relevant model data are stored here, and they will be stored for the next 50 years, I'm convinced, right? Because the DKIT said the long-term storage won't stop here. But this is a national funding thing. Actually, we would need the same on European level and then on international level, but how to organize this across all the different policies from national thematic members, international institutions, and to getting this all together seems to be quite difficult. Maybe not on a technical, but for sure on a political level. So I don't know how to answer those questions or this question. We will see, I think. Maybe it is very important to make clear that long-term is crucial.
Thanks, Claudia, for the comment. So are there any other questions from the audience? Otherwise, Rob, maybe you can share the results from Slido and we can comment, ask for more comments. So, okay, thank you, Rob. So that was the first question we made you. So, which was in 1 or 2 words, what is the main obstacle to increase fairness of a data repository that you commonly see? I see a lot on vocabularies, metadata, striking, standards, support. So it seems there is a lot around metadata and standard vocabularies, which is important. But I think on that, we have another question that we made you, which is this following one that we can maybe then discuss both together. How can you show also the other one?
So here's the next question.
Okay, no one answered to that one. That was probably too difficult.
We can, the thing is it has to be
Okay, it's coming
Let's
up.
give them a few more minutes.
So the point, was, so indeed one of the challenges around metadata and standards of metadata. So the question was, is it better to make different standard interoperable, or do you try to adhere to a single standard? So it seems that those who answered indeed are more in favor of make different standards interoperable. Someone still adhere to a single standard. Claudia, you were the one thinking out loud that this was an important topic to discuss. Is there anything that you want to comment on this?
Yes,
results?
I want to comment that this is known for years. Make them all interoperable. Yeah, sure. Fully agree. But then how? You know, it comes into details, it comes into practice. And in this practice, it is not so easy to get everything interoperable. When you have such different metadata for a specific geo community compared with a social archive for surveys, right? The question is in detail, which it's not only about the mapping, which metadata element you map to what, but for instance, issues at granularity. This is really crucial, and it is not so, it's not easy to do it in practice. So my impression is that the, let's say, theoretical level of how could we make that all interoperable and the reality and what just do start working, there is a huge gap. And this is somewhat very annoying. And I believe to make them interoperable just helps if you start working, because when you, the discussion is important, but somewhere you have to make it, right? And then I think it is very important to keep in mind that standards evolve, software evolves. So it's an ongoing process. This can be very, very annoying because you have to make everything new again. And then you want the machines do it for you, right? Because it's really annoying to set it up again. And but machines can only be as good as the information they get from the humans behind, right?
There's quite some comments in the chat. Claudia, maybe you can read through them and reply while I give the floor also to Federica. She wanted to comment.
Yeah, maybe I was thinking to myself, maybe a more realistic approach would be something in between the two. So don't start with wanting to make everything interoperable at the same time, but start with disciplines that are more commonalities and bring them together.
Yeah, thanks. Any other comment from the audience? Otherwise, we just have a few minutes left, so probably we can move to the next question, Rob. Thanks. So the question was, can training be useful to fill the gaps and helps to indeed. So it seems that most of the answer is yes. So what I can ask, if someone wants to comment, do you think that EOSC should play a central role into this training, or this should be mandated to, let's say, the different providers to organize themselves and do those kind of trainings? Do you have any feeling on that? I think there is no strong opinion on that question. Rob, can we move to the next one? Thanks. Which I think is one of the last one. One. So what is the main difficulty you encounter in searching for data? Again, this is 2 words, so we should have a cloud. So I see again metadata are popping up as important also for searching data, quality of data, missing metadata. So very interesting answers, I think. We can discuss this. Just for a matter of time, I will go through to the last question, Rob, just to show it to everyone, which are the results. Which the question was, in 1 or 2 words, what is the most important feature when making use of a data repository? Trust, again, quality. Search seems a very important feature together with reliability. Okay. Indeed, these seems to be the 2 most important. Okay, I recommended on the training. Yeah, there is work indeed ongoing into years future and also together with DICE and the other InfraIOSCO 7 project to provide some specific training on some of the services. There will be also organized by DICE some hackathons and, let's say, hands-on session later on this year. So hope this will be useful for many of you to understand better how to practically work with the services. We are running out of time, so I will just ask if there is any other question from the audience, anything that, obviously you can drop us an email to any of us, all the speakers, anytime. But if you have something you would like us to address now, feel free to raise your hand. Seems not. So I'd like to thank you all again for joining so numerous to this webinar today. Sean, please. No, you raise and then you go. So I don't know if Sean wants to say something or not.
Maybe he was just stretching.
Okay, no accident. Okay.
Accidental.
So again, thank you all for attending so numerous today to this webinar. As mentioned before, we will make slides registration available to you to go over it again in the future. And again, if you have any question on any part of the webinar, you can drop us an email and we will be happy to answer you. Thanks to all for joining, and see you next time. Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
And thanks to all
Bye.
the speakers.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.